John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. Today we're going to answer your questions from my video about O.J. Simpson's estate. But first, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We put out new videos almost every day. And make sure you hit the like button because, hey, every like helps. John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. To tell you a little bit about myself, I'm the author of Estate Planning for the Modern Family and was recently voted one of the top lawyers here in Cobb County, Georgia, along with the law firm being voted one of the top law firms here in Cobb County, Georgia. Today, we're going to answer your questions from my video about O.J. Simpson's estate. Now, this is super interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I posted a video about O.J. Simpson's estate and it gained over 60,000 views and people left a ton of comments and questions on it. So if you're interested, you can check out that video over here or in the link below. The questions were fantastic, and so I'm going to answer some of those today, so let's get started. @user with a lot of letters and numbers say, thanks for the video. Although someone has a living trust, what paperwork is required to be filed upon death? Is it law that a will or some kind of information/paperwork has to be filed with the county/state when each person dies? That's a really good question. Generally, the idea behind the living trust is that your family can avoid probate if you've created one and properly funded it. By funding, we mean moving your assets over into the name of the trust. So, if you've done that, there probably won't be any paperwork that will need to be filed with the probate court when you pass away. But here's something to keep in mind. Trusts come with what we call in the industry a pour-over will. And that's what O.J. Simpson had. It may be necessary to file the will at the courthouse, but not probate it. In other words, you're just letting the court know that probate isn't necessary because the person didn't have any assets that needs to be probated. Why? Because the assets were held in a trust. So, in that case, the will would just be filed at the courthouse to put it on record with the probate court. Additionally, your family will need a death certificate. So, I'm not sure if that's what you mean by paperwork, but getting a death certificate is pretty standard paperwork when a person passes away. @Corkfish1 says, pour-over provisions are still subject to probate, are they not? Well, not really. The only time it would be is if you've forgotten to put something into your trust. I'll give you an example. Let's say you set up a trust and 10 years later you decide to buy a cabin up in Blue Ridge. Sounds nice, right? Well, imagine when you buy the cabin, you buy it in your own name and you never place it into the trust you created 10 years earlier. All of a sudden, you pass away and you have this cabin that's in your name. Well, in that case, the pour-over provisions would need to be probated. The will would be probated and the cabin would eventually be placed into your trust because the will would pour over that asset into the name of the trust. But if you've properly funded the trust, which most people do, then the pour-over provisions would not need to be probated. Great question. @JasonUdchitz302 says, credit cards don't have to be paid as long as your name is not on it. That's like saying trying to get blood from a turnip. Well, it's a good question, but I'm not really sure what you're getting at. Yeah, you don't have to pay credit cards that don't have your name on it. I mean, I don't have to pay Bill Gates' credit card bills, and he doesn't have to pay mine, but let's bring it a little closer to home. I don't have to pay my wife's credit card bills, and she doesn't have to pay mine. That's different if both of us are on the same credit card, but I think you're talking about if only one person's name is on it. But let's imagine that I had a credit card and passed away. You're correct that my wife, or Bill Gates for that matter, wouldn't have to pay my credit card, but the credit card would still need to be paid. I think you might be thinking, well, if your name is on the credit card and you pass away, who's left to pay it? The answer is your estate. It's a simple math equation. Your executor or administrator will tally up your assets, and then those assets will be used to pay off your debts, even credit cards. Then whatever's left over, if there is anything left over, will get paid out to your family or whoever you've left your estate to. So that's a good question. @Mike D says, so it sounds as if his family will inherit nothing since there is a civil lawsuit judgment that I don't believe was ever paid. Or am I misreading that? Excellent question. By the way, Mike D is a member of one of the greatest groups of all time, so I guess I'm aging myself a little bit. So the answer is it's probably going to be the reverse of that, but we may never know. The great thing about having a trust is that nobody has to know what you have or who's getting it because it's a private instrument. In OJ's trust, He may have left everything to a charity or split it equally amongst his family. So it's possible that his family will inherit everything he owned and the judgment won't be paid. The idea behind the trust is you take things out of your name. If you don't own anything when you pass away, there's nothing to pay creditors like judgment holders. You don't own anything because you've put everything you own in a trust that you control while you're alive. So it's quite possible that his family will get everything and the creditors won't be paid. At Feminine Poet says, on the news a few days ago, the executor of the will stated there is a numeric order of who gets paid what. The Goldman monies owed falls around number 8 or 9 in numeric order. Great question. So there is an order of who gets paid first, and it's set by law, not by the will. You wouldn't put in your will the order for creditors to be paid because you can't place certain creditors over others. So, for example, your estate would pay your funeral expenses before they paid your credit cards because funeral expenses are placed at a higher priority than credit card bills. To see a typical way that creditors are placed in order, check out the video I created that explains a typical order of creditors by clicking over here, or I'll put the link in the description below. Interestingly, you'll be able to find out who the creditors 1 through 7 are because that will is in the public record. One of the great things, or bad things depending on how you look at it, is that there aren't any secrets in probate court. So we should be able to see a list of OJ's creditors at some point. That's really all we have to talk about today. If you've watched our videos for any amount of time, then you know what we do is we help people plan their estates. To do that, we've created a book called Estate Planning for the Modern Family. You're going to want to get a copy of this book, so I'm putting a link in the description below so you can order it online. It will tell you all about wills, trusts, powers of attorney, and the probate process. It also comes with a bonus. The bonus is if you have trouble sleeping at night, you can read it and it will get you right to sleep. So make sure you read it in the morning. If you want to learn a little bit more about the firm or maybe schedule a free consultation for yourself, give us a call at 678-809-4922. That's 678-809-4922. I'm also putting a link in the description below so you can reach out to us to schedule that free consultation. All right, that's all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button because, hey, every like helps.